I think the beauty of this place is that it came from the community, from different parts of the community, and you know, neither group could have done it alone. The city didn't have the money. Obviously, the not-for-profit sector doesn't have the money. Foundations didn't have the money. But together, we somehow found a way to piece it, and that's really what good coalition building is about, right? Is out of our individual scarcity, together we can achieve quite a bit. So that would be point number one. I think a key learning is that just build that coalition, and you know, be creative in the building of that coalition. Like, who'd have thought that this is a kind of heritage project? It's a food security project, it's an arts and culture project, it's a recreation project, it's a community building project, and usually, especially if your institutions are big, they tend to do silo thinking, right? So, you know, the social services people, they're over here, and if they don't own it, control it, they want to kill it, or they don't care about it. And the rec people, they're over here, but to get people to think this way, I think is a challenge, and if you can make it happen, there's a lot of resources out there. Second thing is my learning is all public processes, even about things that to you might be self-evidently absolutely fantastic, are conflictual. There was a lot of conflict in this project, right? So if you can imagine these barns, like, who could be against this? I'll tell you, between 2000 and 2005, it was war. Like, it was war on these streets. And Paulina, who I introduced you to before, who's as gentle as a lamb, and a group of others, like, a fight sometimes isn't the right word, but we had to work it through as a community. So if you can imagine, these barns were like this, there were raccoons all over the place, the outside was looking like a mess, and some people said, you know what, let's just demolish the whole GD thing and start from scratch and get a grass and tree park, right? But then, you know, as we started to kind of go in, and no one had been in, so these barns were closed for operation in 1978, right? I imagine before any of you were born. I'd say all of you were born. Certainly before I was born. No. But then for about 22 years, no one had been in it. So from the outside, they looked ugly. And in 2000, when I got elected for this area, I'd been north of St. Clair, then they rejigged the boundaries, and this came into my area. I went in, I said, holy shit, look at this. And then I can remember saying to others, before we knock these things down, could some folks just come in and see the thing? And then the majesty of the ceilings, and if you had just a little bit of imagination, you could see the possibilities, right? But not everyone can do that. You know, some of us as human beings, and if you're in planning and architecture and that, and some people can read diagrams and imagine it in their mind's eye and live it and be excited by it. Some people cannot actually see it unless they touch it.
Yeah.
Right?
Many people, yeah.
Many people. And so that's the gap. That's the gap. And the way we tried is yes, sometimes we fought at committees, sometimes we had meetings and workshops, and I'd go to people's homes and I'd talk to whoever would want to talk to me at coffee shops. Others would do it. We had votes on streets whether this should go forward or not, and people were out there getting petitions. So this was the buzz. The buzz in this community for about 5 years was whether to do this or not. And thankfully, and I can remember some committee meetings at council where we won by one vote, right? Otherwise it would have gone backwards or even been demolished, right? And you know, there'd be people like Paulina sitting in the audience there, and there was a woman down here who was knitting, and just kept knitting and knitting and knitting and just watching. And then, but in between the meetings, also chatting it up with councillors and trying to get them on board.
Was there another main competing project, or the other main thing was the green space?
Was knocking it down and just creating green space. Yeah, just total green space.
Right.
And you know, for some, a park is grass and trees and maybe a baseball diamond and that. But to imagine this as part of a park, for some people that was a stretch. And of course, if you look at the ideas of a park, the idea when, if you were on a therapeutic couch and someone said to you, what's a park? You would say grass and trees. But would you say a building would be on it, right? Do you know that the most popular park in the city of Toronto is in Yorkville. It's basically about the size of this, and it's all rock. Right? It's rock taken from the Cambrian Shield and then brought to Toronto. But everyone goes for lunch there, and they just like to hang on the rock. Right? So it's sometimes, and it's that 19th century Olmsted. Does that name ring the bells to folks? Okay, he was a park pioneer, built
Montreal Park, among others.
Was it Montreal?
Yeah, but the Mount Royal and the Central Park in New York.
Central Park in New York, that's his creation. So it's a bit of nature as an oasis in an urban sea, right? But that's not the modern thinking, I think, on parks is that parks have to be places of human encounter as well as human and nature encounter. And so that's the kind of idea that we tried to build here. So a lot of conflict in that. What was interesting, I was telling Paulina, wherever she is, that since it's been built, and for me, I've been in politics for 18 years, people have come and apologized to me. I have never had that experience before on any project. Like people sometimes hate you for what you do, you have to make the tough calls, that's life, that's the way it is. But to have actually someone come and say, you know what, Joe, I was wrong, but we had thank you for not listening to me, or variants of that. And I think that there's a learning there. They wanted to change, they couldn't change, and they couldn't kind of see their way to supporting it until they touched it. And so, that's where there's a lot of skill required to create things of beauty, and that's where you bring in the professionals. But there's also a thing called persistence, commitment, holding to your values, working it through to the end. All the great projects that certainly I've been part of, they're not one-year hits, one-year wonders. They're 5 to 10-year projects, right?